Right, quiet at the back, settle down now everyone, we've got to have a tough conversation. Before we get into the chat in this video, again I just need to clarify just straight away that I'm not saying that the league title is over in the sense that we're just going to give it to Rangers, guys, here you go, have your title type thing. What I'm saying is, and it's pretty relevant to this video, is that for me, it's extremely unlikely that Celtic are going to be able to claw back a 19-point deficit in the remaining games of the season, given that Rangers have dropped 4 points all season. I know we've got games in hand. I know there's still 2 derby matches. I know Rangers have a history of bottling it at this time of year. I'm just saying that I think it's extremely unlikely that Celtic will win the league this year. So just remember that for the points I make in this video before you absolutely slag me in the comments. Right, topic of today's video is Mr. Neil Lennon. And it is a tough conversation that I think we have to now have about his legacy and how he will be remembered as a Celtic figure. The reason I say figure is that, of course, he's been a player for the club, he's been the manager, he's been a coach, he's been a figurehead for the club for a lot of his spell in Scotland. But I think it's important we have the conversation now to kind of work out how he's going to be remembered when he does leave the club, because it looks like, as much as he's been given more backing from the board in the last week or so, it does look as if his time at the club is drawn to a close at some stage over the next few months or so, and it's not ending in the way that we would all have hoped. Been thinking a lot about Neil Lennon lately and pondering whether he feels maybe deep down that he should not have come to the club for a second spell as permanent manager. Now, I'm not talking about him riding to the rescue after Brendan Rodgers deserted us to go to Leicester, because I think that was what he had to do. You know, he gave some quotes after the trophy day against Hearts in May 2019, not the Scottish Cup final, but the day we were given the Premiership trophy the week before. He did an interview on the pitch with Jerry McCulloch, Celtic TV, when he was told, thanks for coming back, basically. And Neil Lennon's words were, it's my club, it was my duty. And at that stage, Neil Lennon was absolutely adored by pretty much every Celtic supporter out there. He'd come, he'd saved the club, or saved the team in many ways, when Brendan Rodgers had walked out and brought 2 or 3 of his coaching staff with him down to Leicester on the eve of that game at Tynecastle. And Neil Lennon was a steady hand we needed. He helped us over the line really comfortably in the end that season in the Premiership. He, of course, took us to the treble the following week against the same opposition at Hampden, and was then subsequently offered the job in the showers at Hampden after that game. And he won't admit it publicly, Neil Lennon, but I just wonder deep down, privately, if he wishes he hadn't put himself forward to be the permanent Celtic manager after that game at Hampden. I wonder if he wishes that he'd walked out on the highest of highs after finally winning that treble. Now, I know it wasn't all his. Rodgers had won the League Cup earlier that season, but he'd finally guided Celtic to a treble. If he'd have left after that Hearts game at Hampden, he would have been remembered so fondly by everyone at the club. His legacy would have been an absolutely brilliant one, and it just seems a real wasted opportunity, and pretty sad the way it looks like it's going to end this season for him. Now, I should clarify that this video isn't me having a go at Neil Lennon. I've probably done that enough for separate issues on the channel over the last few months. I'm actually understanding a bit where he came from in terms of wanting to be the permanent Celtic manager again back in May of 2019. And it's more a bit of a constructive bit of feedback to the Celtic board, the likes of Peter Law, Dermot Desmond, who I think have let Neil Lennon down badly over the last wee while. First of all, by giving him the job, and then by not relieving him of his duties earlier this season. In terms of Lennon himself, what was he meant to say when he was offered the job in the shower? He was obviously going to take it. He's not the only sports person who thinks they have a longer shelf life than they possibly do. I mean, look at the images there of Usain Bolt. They stick in the mind. A brilliant sprinter, but this is him in his final ever race at the 2017 World Championships. flagging badly and actually pulling up in the end. And as much as Bolt will be remembered for all those gold medals, that is the final image the world saw of him on a racing track. And it's similar in many ways to how Neil Lennon's stuff looks like it's going to finish at Celtic. But one thing I should point out, and I think people often forget this about Lennon's second stint as Celtic boss, last season we were absolutely brilliant. We dropped 10 points in 30 league games. Now I know it was a curtailed season, but compared to the 38 games Brendan Rodgers played in his second season when we dropped 32 points, 10 seems a really low number. And added to that, we had an amazing Europa League campaign in terms of the group stage last season. We had the double header against Lazio that we won, a team that qualified for the Champions League and are in the last 16 this season. And we took 4 points from 6 against Rennes. It was one of the best European campaigns I have ever seen Celtic put together in my life, and it was an amazing time to support the club. He also won the Betfred Cup last season and obviously finished off the Scottish Cup, which was delayed this season. So Celtic last season were brilliant. I'd argue that Lennon's team he had last season were better than the Rodgers team from the second season and the third season. I think only the Invincibles were better in recent history than the Celtic team of last season. And people seem to forget that when they talk about how things have just fallen off a cliff for Neil Lennon. It didn't happen immediately. Last season was a really, really good Celtic team against a decent Rangers team as well that we beat quite comprehensively in the end. But this season, it's just completely fallen off a cliff. And I just think it's really disappointing to see. Neil Lennon must wonder what's gone wrong. But the Celtic support, even more so, are wondering what's gone wrong. We've been left with a manager who's been saying bizarre things in the press pretty much from day dot this season. We've had a board who are so out of touch with the Celtic support that they think Neil Lennon is the right guy to take us forward to the end of the season. It's just totally ludicrous, and it goes back to that point that I think Neil Lennon has been badly let down by the likes of Dermot Desmond, Peter Lawwell, even Ian Bankier and the rest of the Celtic board. Of course, Lennon was never going to leave in the summer. That was never going to happen. But if he had, he would have left once again right at the top in terms of how he was seen by the Celtic support, in stark comparison to where he is now, where fans are just so disillusioned, so frustrated. Some of them, let's not beat around the bush. Some Celtic fans absolutely despise Neil Lennon for what's happened this season. You know it all. We've gone out of the Champions League to a Hungarian side. We've gone out of the Europa League, finishing bottom in our group, losing 4-1, not once but twice to Sparta Prague. We've gone out of the League Cup to Ross County. We've lost both derby matches this season, not scored a goal. One of the games we didn't even have a shot on target. We're 19 points behind at the start of January. It's just been... This might be controversial, but I think it's the worst Celtic season in history in terms of all that stuff I've just mentioned, added to the fact that it was meant to be our biggest year in decades. And Neil Lennon is responsible for a lot of that, and I think it's really sad how it's going to end. How will he be remembered at Celtic once he does leave? I think if we're honest, it's always difficult to peer into the future and see someone's legacy, because I think time is the thing that shapes so many legacies. For example, I think Brendan Rodgers is looked back more favourably this season than he was when he first left the club a couple of years ago. Don't know whether that's right. I think Rodgers was still a snake the way he left the club, but that's just the way time works. I think in a couple of years, maybe 5-10 years down the line, Neil Lennon will be remembered mainly for being a wonderful Celtic figure, the fact that he played for the club for so many years, the fact that he managed the club so well in that first term, got us back, started the run, the historic run of 9 titles in a row, couldn't finish the job, but he's given us so many amazing nights. I think he'll be remembered for the sacrifices he's given for Celtic Football Club, the death threats he's had to deal with since he's moved to Scotland at the start of the 21st century, the almost constant sectarianism, the fact that he was attacked at a game at Tynecastle. He'll be remembered for all of that stuff, but I think equally he'll be remembered for how it all finished. And it's just sad, because for me it didn't have to end like this. And as I've said throughout this video, as much as Neil Lennon's to blame for parts of it, I think Lawwell and Desmond are the real people we should be looking at. Lennon should never have been given the job. It should have gone to a better manager, a better appointment. And even if he was given the job, he should have been relieved of his duties much earlier this season. For me, when we didn't sack him after Ross County, the 2-0 defeat, that was an admission that Neil Lennon was here for the long term, and I think he'll be here for the rest of the season. He had to go at that stage. Some of you watching this will argue he should have gone earlier. He should have gone after Ferencvaros, after the Rangers defeat, after the Hibs draw, that kind of stuff. For me, Sparta Prague was another one. For me, that Ross County defeat was a time when Neil Lennon had to go, and I think the board not sacking him then was the moment this season really, truly was over. But hey ho, that's a nice cheery topic for you today. Let me know in the comments below what you think about Neil Lennon's legacy. How will you remember him as a Celtic man, Celtic figure, once he does eventually depart the club?